All right, all right, all right. Welcome to episode 2 of LaLa Land with George Fisher. And today we have just an incredible dude. I've known him for a number of years. We have so much history, and I'm so glad to know him. He is a phenomenal musician who's been around the world dozens of times. I don't know how many times you've been around the world, but we'll get into that.
Not done yet.
Right. He is a phenomenal bass player. He's played with some legendary musicians. He has a wonderful story. Super talented. He can do numerous things. He's known for bass playing, but he has a phenomenal singing voice. He can play guitar. He can play drums. Super talented, very insightful, very smart, intellectual, creative person. Put your hands together for the one and only Albert Berry. How's that for an intro, brother? Yeah. So Al, brother, it is so good to have you on the podcast. Man, me and Jordan were talking earlier. Actually, it was Jordan had brought it to my attention. He's like, "Hey, when are we gonna get Al on the show? When are we gonna get Al on the show?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll call him up and see when we can schedule," because you've been so part of our lives for such a long time.
A few decades at least.
Yeah, at least 2 decades, right? And real quick, I want to tell you a story real quick. So we were living. We had just moved to Southern California. Yeah, we had just moved from Northern California to Southern California, and we moved to a small community called Stevenson Ranch in Santa Clarita. And within the first month, I remember I would see this brother walking down the street.
We were the only 2 brothers there.
Yeah, the only 2 brothers in town, right? Two light-skinned brothers, And I would be parking my car on the street there right before I walked up to my little spot, and I'd see this brother walking down the street with his bass on. He's got his bass bag and his bass in there, and he's walking down. He's got these cool sunglasses on, and one day I go, "Hey, brother," and then he, you turn around, you're like, "Hey, my man."
That's so funny.
And then from there.
Yeah.
We were fast friends.
Oh,
we would see each other, and then I think that first time when I met you, you came over to the car and you were like, "Hey man, what's your deal?"
Yeah, it was weird because I don't think anybody in the community even spoke to me really. We were just getting. Our story was similar to yours, except for we were in Burbank.
Okay.
And so we both had kids, and the kids were getting settled in new community schools and everything, and I was touring at that time, obviously, in and out of town. And so I really hadn't had a chance to really become very familiar with the community either. And when I saw you, it was like seeing a mirror of myself in a way. Like, wait a minute, there's another brother who lives in here, and what's going on? You very creative looking guy.
Right.
And just
right.
and we started talking, and we both have so many things in common, man.
And then by that night, I think you had told me, you're like, "Oh, I have rehearsals tonight. I'm going to play with
I think it was Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly Clarkson and
Clay Aiken.
I did a tour. I was doing a tour. You were doing the tour,
those, yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah, I think we have rehearsals tonight. Do you want to swing by? You want to come check it out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come." He's like, "Yeah, maybe I can."
Which is rare, because usually those are closed rehearsals. But I think we were actually at the point of the tour we were about to start having family and friends show up to kind of, make sure the production value of the show was on point and everything.
Sure.
And so it was cool. I mean, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah,
brothers, really.
Brothers,
man. Like
really.
in a deeper way than I think we even realized at the time.
Yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
how a lot of things in our lives aligned.
Oh my gosh.
In very surprising ways.
We've been through a lot of similar situations, and I'm grateful for you, brother.
Same here.
I'm grateful for
Absolutely.
you because without you, it would have been hard because I didn't have anyone in town that I could kind of lean on.
That's big.
So it was huge to have you in my corner. And I remember when we got to know each other, then we'd go to each other's houses. And I remember I turned my garage into like a little recording studio, and I learned a lot from you.
Well, you did the same for me.
Oh yeah,
then I painted my garage and turned my 2-car garage into, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, tell us your story when you really got started, because you started pretty young when you were starting off as a musician.
It's kind of funny because really the start wasn't even anything that was. I can't even put a date on it, man. You know, it was one of those things that it was just pure inspiration. And at that time in my life, I didn't understand anything about intention. I was just a kid who loved the arts and who loved music. And basically, I just put myself in any situation where there was music going on or people playing music. I always put myself in those situations. And I think that's one thing I would love to say to young creatives these days is that, to me, it was as much of a fantasy and a desire and a dream. I just wanted to be around it. And the more I put myself around it, I think the more my passion grew for wanting to somehow be involved somehow and trusting that would happen in some way or another, right? So I remember when I was really young, my mother put me, and this is in the 70s, there used to be these programs that happened in the summertime where it would maybe 2 or 3 weeks of a cultural arts program, and they could give you a bag lunch with the apple and the, bologna and cheese sandwich and whatever, but really it was kind of like just daycare for the most part, right? Your mom's at work, right?
Sure.
And so I went to one of these camps, man, and they had art and they had percussion and they had, different, things that kids could get into. And during that time, the government actually spent money for these programs for kids. And I went, man. I just fell in love with the percussion. And then I saw a guy come in and play drums, and I was like, I want to play drums.
Oh, is that what you started with? You started with drums first? Okay.
Yep. And I didn't know how I was going to get a drum set. Wow. Because my mom and dad were divorced when I was pretty young, so pretty much single mom, And, Mom, I want a drum set. Yeah, okay. Anyway, one of my neighbors, I talked about it so much that one of my neighbors actually had an uncle who lived in their basement, and they were moving to a new place, and they couldn't take the drums with them. He told me, because I always talked about, wanting to play drums, wanting to play music, right? Said they would give it to me free. We're going to give you this drum set. I took the drum set home, set it up in the living room. My mom came home, what is this? My friend gave it to me. She called to fact check it. And literally that was like the beginning. And literally a couple weeks after that, they got stolen.
Oh.
Playing outside with some friends. And somebody gave it away for a bag of candy or something. I think that was like the first fight I ever got in there. I was just... And then a guitar. It was a guitar. Then next it was a guitar. I want a guitar. I want a guitar. You kept putting that out there. And eventually I got a guitar and started playing a guitar. And for me back then, that was my love language, man. It spoke to me. Music always spoke to me. It always moved me. It always inspired me. And everywhere it was, I put myself in the position to be around music. And then eventually, I guess I do believe in this sort of pure manifestation thing. I think a lot of people talk about it these days as it's sort of a blueprint. And I don't know that there's many theories about it, right? But when we're young and we're kids and we don't have bills and responsibilities, or adulting is not real, we don't have things to worry about, we don't think about a why or how.
Sure. We
just think we have a one-track mind, which is very powerful.
Right.
We think, I want this. I don't think about how I'm going to get it. I mean, sometimes we go, well, is my mom going to get it, or do we have enough money? A lot of times we're not concerned about that. We just want it. We don't care how it's going to come. It could be used. It could be broken. I just want it, right? Things start to happen, man.
Yeah.
And then I think after that, it's just really about allowing yourself to trust that you have what it takes, even as you follow those paths, to make that thing a reality for you.
Didn't you have an aunt that bought you a bass?
Actually, what happened is when my mother passed away, from cancer, I moved in with my aunt and her family. And she had already bought violins and flutes and saxophones because, my cousins who were older than me I was the youngest. And she basically said to me, okay, I'm not going to buy another, saxophone that's going to rust or a violin that's going to break. She goes, if you want a guitar, we have a lawnmower and I'll give you gas money and you can go cut some lawns around the neighborhood. She goes, but I promise you this, if you come up with half of the money, I will give you the other half. And I was serious, man. Very serious. So I took that gas money and I went out and I swear I shocked her. Because in 2 weeks, probably less than 2 weeks, I think in 10 days, I straight up went 2 weeks, 2 weekends in a row, I know for sure, I made enough money to buy this guitar that I saw at the pawn shop.
Yeah, nice.
And then she said, okay, wow. She was surprised. I gave her an envelope, dude. She was like, okay. So then she took me to this pawn shop, because this is where I saw the guitar, right? So she got me the guitar and she bought me an amp.
Yeah.
And a strap and the cable. And from that point on, I was very serious about it.
Yeah.
To me, there was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to be a part of a band or somehow elevate, And I think that and even that wasn't even the sort of final destination for me, because about a year later, I was playing guitar in a class that a woman I'll never forget. She was my middle school music teacher, and she basically started a program for kids who were non-band musicians, meaning I didn't want to play trumpet. A lot of us couldn't read music at the time, but we wanted to jam. And she saw she saw, I can see what she saw now being an adult. She saw these young black kids who were more inspired to do music than be out in the streets, or we weren't really sports guys. And she wanted to give us some way to tap into our potential, but in a situation that was non-classical. So basically what she allowed us to do is after the band would rehearse, she would allow us to set up our stuff. And then she would allow us to have an organized sort of jam. And then after a while, she just basically said, okay, if you guys show up on time and you wear, a white shirt and black pants, or they're pressed, we'll let you play one song after the band performance. And so basically we had a band in my middle school. And the one thing I love about her name is Miss Ross. I'll never forget Miss Ross. She made us sign a contract. She said, the only thing I want you to do is you have to sign this contract. And all this contract says is that when you get out of junior high school, you're going to audition to get into Douglas High School, which is the only high school in the city that had a music program, a real music careers program.
Now, wasn't that like a
music and art school? Music and art
school, kind of like a fame
kind
of situation.
Well, I'll put it like this. When I was in...
isn't that where...
Jada Pinkett Smith went there.
Jada Pinkett Smith?
Well, it's weird because I went to Douglas High School.
Okay.
School of the Arts opened in Baltimore in right before my junior year at Douglas. The Baltimore School for the Arts opened up, and that's where both Tupac Shakur and Jada Pinkett Smith went.
Nice.
I was thinking about transferring from Douglas High School's program to the Baltimore School of the Arts because they had a dance program, they had a program for acting, and they had a more eclectic music and arts program. Douglas High School mainly focused on music careers.
Wow.
And it was one of the oldest institutions in Baltimore that supported, as a matter of fact, in my freshman year of high school, Cab Calloway, who was an alumni of my high school, came to perform for us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So I toyed with the idea of going to the School for the Arts because it was a brand new school.
Sure,
it was downtown. It was,
Yeah.
it had a really diverse program with a lot of money going into it.
Yeah.
But I was already in all city, all state choir and performing, and I had a band and all that. So I stayed at Douglas High School, and so one of my first big performances in my junior high school. This kid is running through the music room, and I left my damn near brand new Les Paul copy leaning up against a chair. This kid jumps over the chair, catches the cable with his foot, and I literally see my guitar fall over in like the slow motion. Like when you're in a movie, you're like, ah, and it's like, dude, oh, and it's like literally like my heart broke. My heart broke, dude. I was like, this damn. And dude, like everybody just saw me just fall to pieces.
Sure. Man, that reminds me, just a side note. I remember at one time, man. Oh, okay. It was my birthday. And we were at Bill's house. Okay, you'll find out who Bill is. I have a little story about Bill. We were at Bill's house. It was my birthday, and I brought all the instruments because I had everything. I had I think you were there.
I think I came by.
And my Sienna Sunburst American Standard Fender Stratocaster. I had it on a stand. And this fool comes over, I left all my guitars out, my drums out, keyboards out, so we could all jam, and everybody did jam. Mm-hmm. I think Jamie and all them showed up too. And this fool didn't play guitar, and he picks it up and he's like, clink, 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 and then goes to put it on the stand, but doesn't put it on the stand.
Oh, dude.
And then I just watch it go, and put a nice big chip in it.
Oh,
and it just, it was so,
dude.
Sorry.
No, and this is the crazy thing. All summer long, before I had to audition to get into the high school,
yeah,
I looked for a neck, and back then it was a copy. I couldn't even afford a neck.
Sure.
The Les Paul neck, a used Les Paul neck, was more expensive than the whole guitar.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I had to borrow a guitar to actually do my audition to get into the high school.
Oh, wow.
But when I got into high school, I no longer played guitar. I started playing bass.
Oh, how
So
funny.
basically that summer, I didn't have a guitar. I didn't have a guitar.
So where did the bass come
My
from?
cousin played bass. So he was playing bass, I was playing guitar. And after a while, he was just disinterested, right? So he had this bass. It sat in the corner and got like dusty. And I was like, well, let me just play that. So it's the crazy thing about it is that I was not deterred. I was going to play music.
Right.
If it wasn't drums, if it wasn't guitar, I was going to play something. And bass just happened to be the thing that once I started playing it, somebody heard, hey, I heard you play bass. You want to join the band? I was like, all right, cool.
And then you were just like, hey, well,
Yeah.
as long as I'm playing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. My first instrument was drums too.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I loved the drums, man. I wanted to be, but I was never really that. I think what I realized I was a songwriter and producer. I liked all the instruments.
Yeah.
And I liked putting everything together. Once I could conceptualize how to put things together, even though I wasn't, trained. And I remember I would bring tracks to your house and I'd be like, hey, I wrote this. What do you think?
Well,
what do you think about this one? And
I appreciate that.
and it was looking back.
It wasn't bad, man. I'm going to tell you that. No, I'm going to be honest with you. You know what it is? I think this is the thing that's really, really unfortunate is that.
But you never ever said anything negative. You always said something encouraging.
I knew you were searching.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. Everybody's searching now.
Yeah.
Everybody's searching.
Sure.
And it's, first of all, one of the things I appreciate, and I saw this recently, and it's something that I'm starting to embrace a lot more. People who are doing more than you are never going to criticize you. It's always people who are doing less than you are that criticize you. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you look at somebody that's trying their ass off to do something great, you don't criticize them. You just watch their journey and you encourage them. And you actually, believe it or not, appreciate the fact that they're like bold enough and courageous enough to have a beginner's mind. Like I've never done this, but I'm gonna figure out a way to get it done on my own, which is the one thing that always impressed me about you. You're like, okay, I can't go hire this guy and hire that guy, hire this guy, but I can do this well enough to come up with something on my own.
Yeah.
And that is power, bro.
Yeah.
To me, that's really being empowered. Very few people actually get to the point where they can master that, though. And certain people find a lot of success in it. I mean, music has changed a whole lot. Now guys can buy, a workstation, and you can do some sampling, and you can pull pieces from here and there. You don't really need to play a physical instrument. And some guys do it well enough to create sustained careers from it, right? Different thing. But I appreciate the fact that you literally put time in to learn or teach yourself several instruments. And you really went after it, man. I respect that.
Thank you,
You
brother.
bought books, and you were looking through chord changes. And you were asking questions.
Because you were the closest person and the most accomplished person that I had ever known that was super cool about it. Like, I would ask you a question, and you always had the answer, but you always pointed me in the right direction. You didn't just go, it's A flat minor, and you're in a minor key. You would say, no, you're on the right track.
Well, there's no stupid questions. I think that's the thing about, and we all go through it at different times. Like, the one thing that's the most dangerous thing about anything when people are trying to create is the ego. When we were growing up, if we wanted to learn something, we had to ask somebody else. We couldn't go on YouTube to shortcut or hack a situation. We had to go to somebody who knew what they were talking about, who could give us good information. And a lot of that right there, it creates, you got to be humble to do that. This guy might not even give me the time of day, but you got to work up the confidence. And in most cases, when you ask somebody how to do something, they're going to give you the best advice they can. Right?
You know what's interesting that what just popped into my mind? YouTube wasn't around.
Yeah.
When just even as early as, maybe it was around 20 years ago, but I just remember sitting in my garage with my gear and just working on something, like no distractions. I taught myself how to play guitar. I taught myself how to play drums. I taught myself how to play bass. I remember asking you, what do you do here? And you're like,
right.
You got to learn how to stretch a little. Like, you would give me these pointers, and then I'd go home and just focus on writing this track and doing this. And for hours and days and weeks, there was no other distraction. And I feel like now it's so easy to be distracted that nobody becomes
a student anymore.
A student.
You're a good student, man.
Because you just realize, and this was the other thing that was really interesting, because my computer was in the garage. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the internet connection. So I couldn't
distract yourself.
I couldn't distract myself and go online and go on YouTube and do all this other stuff. If I was working on a track, that's all I had to work on. I had to literally sit and learn how to record on Pro Tools. I had to, and then I would, and I called it the Funk Lab, and I remember you would come over and I would play tracks for you, and you'd be like, hey, that sounds a lot better. Yeah. That's coming along.
That's the benefit of the basement. It doesn't exist anymore. Like on the East Coast, everybody had basements.
Sure.
And it was cool because that's where we rehearsed. That's where we worked on our music. And then that's where we spent time alone working on our craft. And they call it woodshedding because really it is that sort of environment. Nowadays, man, there are so many shortcuts and so many hacks that people don't really want to spend time being a student anymore. And you're a great student.
Thank you, brother.
I mean, everything I've ever seen you do. When you were playing guitar and you was like, I got this chord book and I'm in these chord changes. I'm playing piano and I'm looking at these different changes and I'm learning so much about chord changes and movement. Like that alone is a wisdom and a knowledge and a gift that most people don't even get to experience. And it's okay because there's some people out there creating music without a prior knowledge of music history or any sort of musical theory. Not that theory is everything, but there is a process that once you learn something, that can never be taken away from you. And then the work ethic behind what it takes to learn something, because you have to sort of have this discipline that's able to block out distraction.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely necessary. We know this
Yeah.
because we grew up in a time where there were a lot less distractions.
Right.
You know, with the social media and all these other things now, right? It's important to be able to know that you can literally lock yourself in a room and have the mind power and the intelligence to learn something.
I remember when I decided that I was really going to take playing guitar seriously. Like I really wanted to understand how to play guitar, and then the next step would learn how to sing and play guitar. And I decided I'm going to learn Purple Rain because I had like hits 1 and 2 from Prince, right? The book, right? The song book. And it took me 3 months to learn that song from beginning to end every day after work, after working at the telemarketing center. I was a manager at some call center, and I would get home and man, I would literally pray. I would pray first. I said, Lord, give me the strength and patience to learn these chords, Lord.
It takes both.
And because I'm going to sit here and I'm going to learn that. And I did, and it took me 3 months. And I would write. I kept a log and everything. I was like, how far I got in the song, and man, I play every chance I get. I play that dance.
Well, you know what? It's almost like once you've done something, I really think that once you've done something with a certain amount of repetition, it becomes a part of permanent memory stored in our hard drive, right?
Sure.
People don't realize how much work it takes. And I know this for a fact. I've seen it. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves, especially when you're playing live in front of people who paid a lot of money for tickets to come see an artist you're working for, or you, right? People pull out their phones, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, they have no understanding of the value before full production. Just like right here.
Yeah.
You don't have any value for the hour or so it took to set up.
Sure.
It takes to get this.
Right.
People are going to see this thing and just see two guys talking.
Right.
But there's a lot that happens.
There's a lot that happens
behind the scenes to make this. And the same thing with that. Every person individually, from a music to a dancer to a front house engineer to a monitor engineer to a stage manager to the venue to hanging, rigging, it's a whole full-on production that goes into the thing that people finally see what they pay their $50 or $100 or more for to see, right?
Sure.
They don't take into account like, wow, that dude is playing drums who's so badass spent 8-9 years of his life learning rhythm and time and feel and having this instinct. And then you got all these other people who play their roles in this situation as well. They put in their time and their hours, right, to produce this. It's almost like there's no real value given to that process. And then when people sort of buffer themselves from being present, it almost takes the value. It's like I said, when I was a kid, it amazed me when I would go to. I remember one time I went to like a fair or something with my family, and I think it was one of the first times I was a kid. I saw like live musicians playing. We were really close to the stage. It might have been like the OJs or something like that. But dude, I was mind blown because I'm watching these dudes like doing like spins and moves and steps, and the band is killing it, and I'm just like, man, this is impressive. Like, this is what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
It was nothing in my mind that made me believe it wasn't a reality, but there was nothing also in my mind that didn't also say you're going to have to put some work in to get this good.
Sure.
And to get that good, you're going to have to put yourself around people who can maybe either pass on the inspiration or the information it's going to take for you to start your journey in becoming that good. And I think that's one of the things that, we all have it in us to be great. But one of the things, I even had a conversation with a dear friend of mine this week. Having wisdom and applying wisdom are two different things. We can have wisdom. I can walk into a situation and carry wisdom with me and how to best navigate, but applying the wisdom is a discipline. You can have discipline, but not apply discipline. You know?
Sure.
And it's weird because it's all these little things, man, like stuck together that create great moments. And like I said, even when I was a kid, even that singular focus about wanting to do something and not even thinking about, I think that's one of the things that trip us up sometimes as adults. Because I think sometimes we don't evolve forward. I think we lose a lot. When you set your mind on wanting something and you really eliminate the how or the why or the cost or the when, right? You take all those filters out of the way and just go, you just put yourself in energy. And somehow, man, I really believe you end up there.
What was the first big break? I thought your first big break was being at the arts school and getting the call that Nile Rodgers was looking for a bass player. So his people reached out to the school.
No, it didn't go like that at all.
It didn't go. Okay, so what
man. What's crazy?
What was the first big break that you had?
And it's weird because it was not really a one big break. It was a series of things. I was playing in probably one of the biggest bands that I could have played in.
What was the name of that band?
It was a band called Big Noise, and Big Noise basically was a reformation of a band that was called the Ravens. There was a band from Baltimore who had a song that became a hit because it was on the Fast Times at Ridgemont High soundtrack.
Nice.
Right? The lead singer and the drummer from that band and a guitarist and I formed a band, and we called it Big Noise. Anyway, this was pretty heavy for me because I know you had a situation similar. I was a young dad. I was a dad when I was 21 years old. Mm-hmm. This is after high school. I had already played a lot of gigs around Baltimore and a lot of bands and stuff like that. We went to New York to do a battle of the bands for a record deal. And we were playing at the Cat Club in the Village. It was not the first time I was in New York, but it was definitely the first time I was in New York with the intent of being inclusive of the music industry. We knew the labels are in New York and LA. Sure. No matter where you are. Right. You know, outside of Motown and Detroit, whatever. But this, you know, it's like LA or New York. You got to go play for major labels, right? Nashville's a different thing. But we went there and we played with a bunch of cool bands. And you know, as we're waiting to find out, you know, whether or not we're going to get any interest, that night something amazing happened to me. The front of house engineer walked up to me and said, "Hey, man, I really love your playing. You're a great bass player." He goes, "No matter what happens with your band, if you ever end up here in New York, I got a band, you know, and if you're interested in playing, because we have a guy that plays bass who subs in and out, I'd love to have you come out." I took his number. Another guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, my name is Bobby Chavanard." I was like, "Cool, good to meet you." He goes, "Yeah, I'm Billy Squire's drummer." And I said, "Oh, cool, good to meet you, man." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, as a matter of fact, Billy's having auditions for his next tour, and I think you might be a really good fit for the band. He said, "You're a New York guy." I said, "I'm from Baltimore," but I said, "I'll gladly take a 2-hour train down here for the audition." He's like, "Cool, give me your number." And as soon as I got back home, it was just like, I need to be there. I need to be in New York.
Oh, okay.
I need to be in New York.
Sure.
I did everything in Baltimore could pretty much do to a certain degree, right?
Right.
And I knew it. It was literally one of those moments for me. It was like, you know what? I need to move to New York. And without hesitation, and it was a big turning point in my life, to be honest with you, because I had just become a dad. And I'm going to tell you a story that I'll never forget. I'll never forget this. Right before I was planning to move to New York, a friend and I were going to share an apartment. And that apartment fell through. And I really didn't have enough money to come up with like just renting an apartment in New York and all this, and I'm like, how am I got a kid, and how am I gonna take, it was just, my head was just reeling.
Sure.
I applied to Macy's, which was everything against everything in me, especially music, right? Men's suit department at
Men's
Macy's
suits
in Columbia, Maryland, right?
Wow.
And I did a whole week training. and like no,
How to
seriously,
sell
seriously.
suits.
No, just whatever. You go through the whole corporate,
Sure, that corporate,
right?
yeah, man.
And so I'll never forget this. So the last day of training, you literally they give you your suit you're gonna wear,
your little name tag.
Yeah, you get a name tag, you get a clipboard, a Macy's card,
sure.
And you got to go down to the floor to meet your manager of your department, right?
Okay.
There was something that was gnawing at me the whole time, especially that day. It was literally like I knew on a soul level I was at a crossroads. And one was, okay, I have a child and I got to do this responsible thing, which I'm a good dude and I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. Another part is going, man, you have an opportunity to pursue what you love and what you're good at, and it's going to be some risk involved, which is completely opposite of the other thing.
Sure.
And I was at an impasse. Like, what are you going to do, And I remember I walked down on the floor with this clipboard in my hand, just like that. I gave it to my manager. I said, you're never going to understand this, but I can't do this. But thank you. I know they didn't know what the hell. What? I didn't even introduce myself. No, I didn't. I gave them the clipboard, and I walked out.
Did we misspell your
No.
name tag? What's the...
In that moment, I made a decision. I got to do this. I can't pass up this. Too many things had aligned with what I really wanted to do, and it just made sense for me that I need to be in New York, that my time in Baltimore was done. Basically, I went to New York. I didn't get the gig, but I know the guy who got the gig, the Billy Squier gig. But I ended up becoming the bass player in the band he was in.
Oh, okay.
Shortly after that, because I wasn't making money. I wasn't making any money, really. I got a job at the Hard Rock Cafe, and I'm bussing tables.
Okay.
Trying to work my way up to being a waiter. And just to make some extra side money, they would offer us these gigs to do these private parties that they would host. And I said, okay, I want to do this party, just make a little extra money. So I'm at a Lita Ford. Lita Ford, I don't know, it might have been her first record. This was back in
Lita Ford from the Runaways.
Yeah.
Played with Joan Jett.
Yep. It was Lita Ford's release party. And that night at Lita Ford's release party, I met a guy very much like I met you. we just kind of saw each other. Oh, that's a cool looking, but I want to, we just started talking. He said, what do you do? I said, man, I'm a bass player, I'm a singer, and I write music, and I'm here, and just trying to, do my thing, and I'm a part of a band, and I'm not sure where this is going right now, but this is, he said, hey, I'm from LA, and I'm here to record a record, and Nile Rodgers is going to produce my record.
Oh,
His name was Christopher Max, was his stage name, but Christopher McDaniels. His dad's Eugene McDaniels.
Okay, but Christopher Max. Isn't Christopher, I could be wrong, but isn't Christopher Max, didn't he know Lenny Kravitz too?
Oh yeah, that's how I met Lenny, through Christopher Max.
That's how you met Lenny Kravitz?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but
that's how I
got introduced to Nile. So Chris said, come over to my place, man, and let's just see if we vibe. Let's do some writing. He was down in Soho, off of Broadway. So I literally went down to Chris's spot. We just started messing around with some songs he was writing. And dude, 2 months later, I get a phone call. It's like, is this Al? And I'm like, yeah, this is Al. He goes, oh, this is Nile Rodgers. Chris gave me your number. He's like, we're going to do a session on Tuesday. You're available to come play on the song.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, I'm available. Absolutely, right?
So
first time I met Nile, it was on a Christopher Max session.
Wow. Now, Chris, what's interesting about Christopher Max? I heard his music, but of course much later because he passed away. God rest his soul. right?
No, he didn't.
He didn't pass away.
No, he didn't pass away.
Oh my gosh.
No. A lot of people thought he did. He left. He went to Holland.
Oh.
Well, it's funny, man, because a lot of people thought that. A lot of no.
I thought he passed away.
No. A lot of people thought he did. But oh man, he's actually an incredible talent. As a matter of fact, during that time in New York, that I spent in New York, I'm gonna tell you, man, it was nothing more magical. It was nothing more magical. I mean, I was around some of the most amazing talent. I mean, that was around the time where, I mean, obviously when Lenny was working on his first record, Maggie's Dream was a band that he was in. Terrence Trent D'Arby was out, and it was so much.
All the light-skinned brothers were
well, not just that.
We're working it out.
There was dance music. There was hip hop. There were people who were actually. It was interesting because it was also a time where.
Oh, it was a good time, man.
A lot of music. A lot of great,
very.
Yeah.
It was a new style, a new flavor of music, and it was everything. It was rock and soul and blues and R&B all mixed,
and it was still a lot of '80s because I mean, I ended up in New York around when I settled in New York with a sort of permanence and an address was around 1987.
Okay, so what project did Nile want you to work on? Was it Christopher Mack? It was
Chris's record was great. It was called More Than Physical.
Okay.
And at the time, I just don't think that radio was ready for what he was doing as an artist. And to be honest with you, man, I think that Chris's demos were more a reflection of who he was as an artist. And the album that he put out was definitely a more polished version that I just don't know, man. I can't talk about the approach. All I know is that for a fact, if you were a black artist at that time and you were doing anything other than hip hop, R&B, or New Jack Swing, people didn't really have ears for it. Radio really wasn't putting it out. I mean, Terrence had to basically break out of London, to have to be heard with his thing.
Right.
Lenny, same thing, man.
Right.
Lenny's first record was brilliant,
right?
But he got a lot more attention from London, Japan, and Chris. They tried to break him in an R&B market in America, and Chris sort of looked like a more buff Michael Jackson, who had an amazing voice and was writing, sort of like punk, pop, funk.
Right.
Scritti Politti meets, people just weren't,
They weren't ready.
Anyway,
for it.
after Chris did his second record, I think he lost his deal with EMI. Shortly after that, I'm sure he had. I can't speak for him, but I know what it feels like after I've released a record of my own and didn't do what I wanted to do. You sort of go through this withdrawal, and it can feel like depression. It can feel like disillusionment. I can't speak for him what he went through.
Sure.
And life just goes through its shifts. He shortly just decided he was going to go to Holland because that's where his wife was from and he had kids, and he stayed there. And he's still in Amsterdam. He lives in Amsterdam now.
Oh, okay.
And he's doing some things as an artist and creative. And
I think I got confused with
Tony Lamont, I think.
Tony Lamont. That's who I'm getting confused with.
Because everybody was. He was a part of that camp too. So Prince signed Tony Lamont, and Tony Lamont wanted Lenny to produce his record when he was signed to Paisley Park. And I don't know if Prince really knew who Lenny was at the time. See, it's kind of funny because the world was so small back then. Like, I mean, nobody knew that these guys were going to be the superstars. I didn't know that Lenny was going to be the superstar that he is now. Right. He was also just a part of the great scene that was developing around that time with New York musicians. And we all hope that every single one of us would be super successful.
Years ago, I remember having an incredible conversation with Jack Kugel. You know who Jack Kugel is. He's a music producer. He was partners with Jamie Jones.
Yeah.
They had the Heavyweights production team. Jason Panock was part of that team too. But he texted me just like 2 days ago a picture of me in the studio doing something. He's like, "Hey, remember this picture?" And then I go, hey, you want to be on the podcast? He's like, sure.
Good.
So I'll have Jack Kugel on, but I remember sitting in the studio and we were talking about Tony Lamont, and Jack was like, man, this guy.
He was a great artist.
He should have it was like late night. It was after a big session they were doing, and I always went to their studio.
He had one record that you could probably still find. He had a song called Forevermore that was a small hit. I think David Gamson might have produced it from Scritti Politti, I think. But I don't know. I think...
But that's who I'm getting confused. That's who I'm getting confused
Tony
with.
Lamont was a great artist, man. And as a matter of fact, I think Tony and Lenny lived together for a while, I believe.
I think they were really
here
good
in California.
Lenny talks about him in in Lenny's biography.
His book. Yeah, Tony was a very talented dude. Yeah. I met him out here. Because I was a part of a band. I came out here to be a part of a band. When I left New York, and and this is another thing people don't talk about. When I was in New York, it was a beautiful thing to work with Nile. I think at the time, the only reason I was in that position is because him and Bernard were doing separate things at that time. Bernard Edwards, legendary bass player who's gone as well, unfortunately, was a part of Chic. And so I was able to be a part of a few big records that Nile did.
So when did Nile come to you about Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan? What was it? Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimmy Vaughan's record?
Yeah, the Vaughan brothers. People don't understand. That was a process. It was a process.
That's crazy, man.
It was a process. All right, so the first record I did with Nile was with Christopher Max.
Okay.
And a couple months after the actually probably a year, because I toured with Chris. We did a tour around the States, and that was the first gig I ever got as musical director. I was basically rehearsing the band, and
That's cool.
And shortly after, they sort of said, okay, we're not going to put any money behind this record anymore. And they gave him a budget to start working on the second record. Now I was working with an artist named Carol Davis, who was she actually she wrote Slow Love for Prince.
Really?
You know the song Slow Love?
Yes.
Look, Google her later. Carol Davis. She wrote that song for Prince.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people think they co-wrote it, but she wrote that song for Prince.
Wow.
And he recorded it on the...
That's a great song. On the...
Love Sexy. Wasn't that the double album? I think it was.
No, it's the... it wasn't the Love Sexy record. It was the...
what was the record with Sign of the Times?
Sign of the Times.
Oh, is that what it was?
It's Sign of the Times.
Dude,
yeah,
great. So
that's great.
Carol,
great record.
beautiful woman, great artist. Niall said, Al, I'm doing this record with this artist. You want to come in and play on it? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'll come in.
So wait, that first gig, because of Christopher Max,
I became like the resident dude.
He kept
calling me, man. Yeah.
Wow.
And
so you didn't even have to audition for anything.
No,
that all came later
yeah.
when you started.
This is kind of weird because I think that was the thing. People don't understand your journey, man. Like, I had done about 3 or 4 different records with Nile before I did the Vaughan Brothers record, and I did a television show. Nile hosted a television show called New Vision Soul and New Visions Rock on VH1, and I was the bass player in the house band. So I played with everybody from Howard Hewitt to John Hyatt to
nice.
Even Stuart Copeland's band, Animal Logic. We played with all these different artists that came on the show. Lou Gramm. So I literally had
Lou Gramm from
Foreigner. Yeah. So not only had I had 3 or 4 records on my, Kathy Dennis, who's a European artist, I played on her record with him. So by the time that record came around for Now, he knew that the drummer Larry, who we had played as a rhythm section for a long time, we were more than capable of being able to do it.
Nice.
And it was, to him, it was sort of a no-brainer, which I don't think I understood at the time. I'm grateful. I'm always grateful. I'm always going to be grateful to being given that opportunity and being believed in, because none of us knew that Stevie would be gone. And we hoped that record would be as successful as it became, right? And this is a really interesting.
And were you planning on going on tour with it? Because you
Yeah,
did the
yeah,
whole
we
you did the
talked
whole
about it.
record, right?
Yep.
You recorded the whole record, and then there was talk of a tour.
We got calls from his management to do sort of this Westwood One radio thing that was going to be live, and there was talk of a tour. But it was all a bit premature, obviously, because Stevie passed before the record was released.
Yeah, and we all know that that story,
yeah,
switching seats on the helicopter.
And that was
with,
really one of those.
That's tough.
That
man.
was the thing. To me, if you ask me what my big break was, that was my big break, but not in the sense of like, it's twofold. It's like, in one sense, it put me on the map because that record is a piece of blues history. It won Grammys.
Absolutely.
And it's the last record Stevie ever did. It's the only record he ever did with his brother Jimmy.
Yeah.
But in another sense, it was a big break because it broke my heart.
Absolutely.
I felt like that was one of those things in my young mind that was going to set me up as something like that was going to be just like, I mean, I wanted to be on the stage playing with him, like we were in the studio. I wanted to be a part of that legacy, and I wanted to go do that, and my heart was set on it, bro.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Getting the phone call that, number one, that happening, and then number two, realizing that, oh no, like. There was so much invested.
Yeah.
In so many ways. I mean,
we knew it was a great record.
Sure.
And we also, I think the thing that I'm blessed to have been a part of and now also realize is something I missed when I was younger, is that I got to meet probably the best version of Stevie. I got to meet the best version of him. I got to work with the best version of him.
Right, because at that point
he was sober, clean.
He was sober, clean. He
engaged to be married.
Right.
Somebody
he
loved,
happy.
Settled, stable, still on fire.
Sure.
Super fire as a player, and more inspired to just go out and like.
And such a, he had been so exposed to the masses now because he already had done he had done the David Bowie records.
Let's Dance,
Let's Dance, all the solos.
Stevie was,
I
feel like, who are we to say if and, shoulda, coulda, woulda, when, I just know for a fact if Stevie had more years than him, man, it's almost like talking about Hendrix.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's almost along that same sort of legacy where somebody... I don't think that we ever really got to see his absolute best years, but I would have loved to have been a part of it, even if it was just for. I mean, I did get to be a part of it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no.
I would have loved to have been a part of that evolution, extension.
Can you imagine the tours? Because he was just. I think he was just blowing up. I mean, he had some, he had some records under his belt, but he was just getting exposed to the commercial masses. A lot of people that were into blues knew him kind of underground.
Yeah.
But when he started working with David Bowie, and David was really making a name for himself now with Let's Dance and on the top of the charts, and then Stevie Ray doing these solos, right? It was involved with doing the solos for Let's Dance. It kind of elevated him to the pop
absolutely.
audience,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And then doing, he even did a version of Superstition.
Oh yeah. Stevie
and it was just
man.
Like,
you know what, Stevie? People to this day know. They know.
I mean, it was sheer
and
brilliance,
I know,
right?
And it's kind of crazy because I'm gonna tell you when I talk about the journey, the ups and downs, man. People will never understand it. I had such an amazing situation there in New York. I remember the last record I worked on with Niall. After, I think we did a record with, we had done a Rick Ocasek record called Fireball Zone.
Rick Ocasek from The Cars.
Right, that was his solo record. We were basically, I got a call to do a record with Lionel Richie. It was supposed to be Lionel Richie's last record on Motown that Niall was going to produce. And we got to work with Lionel for 2 days. I think we had a setup day and the next day was a recording day. Then I got a call that the recording was going to be pushed back a couple weeks. And it never happened. And this is a part of my young career where I felt slightly disillusioned by the business of music, because nobody knows this, but at the time I was in a situation where like I really needed the money. I wanted the gig for sure, but also I had been set up with a record of dates that were gonna just help me to have a float for the summer. And at this time I'd already went through a divorce. So I was basically saying to myself, okay, what am I gonna do? Just ride this out? Or is it gonna be time for me to make a shift? And everything in me said shift. And even some of my close friends that I talked to about it probably thought I was a little crazy, because I said, you know, there's a group of guys who I've written some songs with who live in LA. One of them was a part of the Chris Max camp. And I'd always thought about going to California and just kind of, I want to do my thing. I've been singing all my life as well. And I feel like as an artist, I haven't scratched the surface. I've become pretty known as a bass player in New York.
Yeah.
And people knew that I sang, but it was like, it's a different thing. Once people give you one label, they don't want to broaden you.
Right.
They want to stick you in that box. It's just the way it goes.
That's the way it goes.
And so, but like people are like, why would you leave a situation like working with Nile and record with him and he calls you, you're his guy? But people don't realize as well what was going on is him and Bernard were also forming Chic.
Oh.
They were doing
I
a Chic
didn't know.
record at the time.
Right.
Yeah. And that was going to take me probably out of pocket for a year.
Gotcha.
My
So
work,
you had to.
my work was either going to dry up. I was doing some other side stuff.
Sure.
But also I felt like, you know what, with the divorce too, I just felt like, you know what, man, I think this might be a time for me to do a geographical shift, you know? So then that was me coming out to LA, which was very humbling, because I had been in a very stable, successful situation with somebody who had been known as a legend super producer at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being treated well and respectfully. And coming out to LA felt like starting all over again. And I was in a band, and I had a little bit of money from some royalties, some jingles I wrote, but not enough to carry me. I had a little. One of the most embarrassing things, honestly, man, I think that ever happened to me is like when I first moved to LA, I was getting some royalty checks, but not enough to like live off of it. I had 2 roommates, and I was struggling to pay rent at a certain time. I'm like, man, shit, this is driving me crazy. And so I said, I got to do something, man. I got a part-time job at Nordic Track in the Beverly Center. Sell these cross-country ski machines.
Cross-country.
I still have one, by the way, which is
machines.
kind of crazy. And I'm going to tell you what happened. This was a day.
Is that where that came from?
Yeah, dude, I still use it.
I
It
remember
works.
I see that.
Dude, you know what? Anyway, I was in Nordic Track one day, and Niall was shopping in the Beverly Center, and just by chance happened to see me, and he walks in this store. And I've got my tan khaki shorts on and my Nordic Track shirt. Nordic Track. I was like, this is the most humbling shit I've ever been through in my life. Like, what are you doing here? But you know what I mean? It's like you got to do what you got to do.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do, bro.
But it's funny how people see in today's world
I got
where
a Wayne Brady story.
that's
to
not
tell
a
you,
win.
too.
That's not an Instagram win.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I just did one of the biggest records that just won all these,
Sure.
awards.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm working in Nordic
man.
Track at the Beverly Center, right? But that was a time where I was really honing my craft as a writer and as a singer. And a part of this band, Civilization. And, we got a small little record deal and had a little money, but it was not enough to survive. And so it was the beginning. And then I had to basically start taking gigs as a bass player. Even though I was focusing on my career as a singer-artist, I still had to take gigs as a bass player to supplement.
Is that when you teamed up with
Shiro?
No, not Shiro. That came later because you did a solo record.
Yeah.
He signed you.
Right.
He had a label.
Yep.
You
I had a record deal
deal
through EMI, then a record through Sony. BMG.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. But when you were playing out with people, was it?
I was doing.
What's his name? Billy? Not Billy Squire? No. Squire.
Oh, Barry Squire. That came later on.
That came later.
I was doing
okay.
gigs with so many people
Barry
around
Squire
town.
Just to clarify, Barry Squire would put a lot of bands together.
He was one of the guys in LA. There were a lot of guys, believe it or not, because Randy Jackson had some guys that he had in his crew of guys. I don't know if you remember this because I don't know if you're here yet, but there used to be a spot called Billboard Live that was on
No.
Sunset. And so they had an R&B night.
Wow.
And then in Beverly Hills, they had a certain night. And then a buddy of mine in town had another. And so I used to go to all these places. And they would have singers come in and musicians come in and sit in. And
Nice.
so I got a lot of cool little local gigs around that time. Nothing that was notable enough to say that it, everybody were great musicians, but nothing really. I was still focused on being an artist, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to put some of my own music out.
Right.
I really wasn't even. I had no interest.
So how did the Shiro
Well,
thing come to pass?
the Civilization record. I'll never forget this. We went to all these different labels shopping the record, and they kept telling us that they wanted to do. I don't know, man. Everybody wanted us to be like a boy band or something. And that's just not what we were.
Yeah, that was kind of the time.
It was a formula.
frame.
It was a
Yeah.
formula because I could sing, and there was another guy who could sing, but like we were more like a cross between Depeche Mode and Seal.
Oh wow.
We were not gonna, he was like, they were like, hi, another white kid, and you guys should get together if you do this. And we had meetings with the biggest, man, and some of the, and they kept trying to niche
Sure.
this thing, and we were
Yeah.
just like, man, I already knew, God, I don't want to have golden handcuffs on,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm going to be doing something I'm not,
Yeah, that you're not
so
really
so
interested
so
in.
we did an independent situation through EMI, and it just didn't. We didn't sell records, man. They didn't know what to promote us, how to promote us, and it's the story. It just didn't fly.
Yeah, my whole thing too. I had an independent deal with a little label out of Temecula. They were in Temecula, then they went to Newport Beach. It was Infinity Records, and I was doing gospel music, and my friend had connections to this gentleman, and it didn't sell. It just you try your best, and you're so excited and you're so gung ho. I did a lot of churches though. We did a lot of traveling. So I thought, oh man, when this record comes out, we're gonna nobody. Nobody cared.
The thing is,
but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
and you can't take away the experience.
Oh, not
what
at
you
all. I
learned from it.
met so many people. I remember doing press, and literally BB and CC Winans are standing in front of me, and Yolanda Adams,
Right.
Olita Adams,
Right. Olita Adams. Great singer.
I don't care how you get
great
here.
singer.
just
Great singer. Great
Get
artist.
here
Great artist.
if you can.
Oh, he's giving it up right
Hey,
now.
we got the mics. We got the mics today.
I
so.
can reach you by trailways.
You right? Yeah, don't get us singing,
That's
folks,
funny.
because
You know what's funny about that though is like I say that now to my kids who are young creatives, and your son's a young
Oh
creative.
yeah, real quick. Let's just super quick. So you have two amazing children, man. Your daughter, I remember when Marley was like this tiny, and then all of a sudden she grew up and she's this beautiful young lady, and she has the voice of an angel. Like, I didn't even know when she was so tiny, she was always so quiet. I remember we took our kids and our families to the beach.
Yeah.
And she was like real close to me, and we were walking, and she's like, "Come on, George." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Walked out to the water.
Oh man.
She's the sweetest thing. But she has this voice of an angel, like, and her name is Marley Blue, and she's an artist. And she's phenomenal. And then you have a son who's absolutely handsome, talented, can sing, play drums, extremely talented.
He's a great producer, man.
He's a producer.
It's crazy
He's a singer.
Yeah.
And his name is Jessamy.
Right. Yeah.
And he's got stuff out. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of crazy because like I talked to both of them this week. And like I just said to your son, who's incredibly talented,
Extremely talented. Yeah, so
and
proud of him.
and is making a name for himself.
Absolutely.
In his creative ventures. You know, I think one of the things I'm probably most proud of. No, it's probably what I am most proud of is like in my parenting. You know, none of us perfect. Is that I hoped to somehow lead a life where I didn't smother them or their potential or their dreams, and maybe gave them enough of a pass through my actions to sort of inspire a belief in them that it was possible they could do anything they wanted to do too. Because honestly, man, to choose the kind of life that we've chosen seems completely ridiculous to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not
you
a
know,
it's not a generic choice. It's not a
and it's not a you're going to get paid this much every week.
Exactly.
And this is how much taxes you're going to pay every year. And, you know, it's nothing about it that makes sense to most people in the world.
Right.
And
right.
quite honestly, even in your intimate relationships, it's always a bit of a, you know, I always say that I understand when I hear people now say you got to bet on yourself because nobody else is going to bet on you like you bet on yourself. And that's very true. But at the same time, there's this really delicate balance in that. Because, especially when you have children, because you want to somehow be able to show them that even if you have a dream and it seems completely impossible and silly, don't let me talk you out of that.
Right.
Because that's yours.
Absolutely.
And if I'm doing anything that looks stupid or silly, I hope it inspires you to do something stupid or silly too, because you might actually take a chance and fall on a star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I'm so grateful of everything I ever got to do, everybody I got to meet and work with, and I still have those friendships till this day. A lot of them, you know.
And to me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's cool, and then for my son to kind of follow, you know. Not really follow in my footsteps. But
he's doing creative work.
But he's doing he's doing a very, I think he's done so much more than I ever got to do. And to be honest with you, isn't that what we want anyway for our kids? Is to go so much farther and do so much more.
I don't know a good parent who doesn't want their kid to do better than them.
Right. Yeah. Because there's parents that are like jealous of their kids.
Which is crazy.
And I would never, I would, of course I would want him to excel and to do, and he's done so many interesting things. And he's not the type of person, we're talking about him like he's not in the room, which is cool.
I think he's blushing. I think his cheeks are turning red right now. I think he's blushing a little bit.
But it's interesting because what's you know what's really funny is I always wanted to work with, like, you know, as an actor. Okay, so I started off with music. That eventually led me to, you know, making a decision to move to Los Angeles. I had an agent. I had management, and people reached out from LA to get me to come out, and I decided to get into acting, a little bit of modeling, and doing some cool stuff. And so one of the people that I aspire to be like, acting wise, is, you know, I really looked at Will, right? Will Smith, and I was like, man, I would love to be like that. Yeah, that's who. And then fast forward years later, you know, my son, of all people, calls me and says, "Hey, Pop, I just got offered to work with Will Smith. Like, I'm going to work directly with Will Smith." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like,
"It's nothing about you at all that's jealous. There's nothing at all. There's nothing about you.
Not at all."
You're going, "Go ahead, man. Go ahead."
No, I'm dude. But I just thought that was so cool. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I'm going to go the other way now. So my father, he worked in he worked in construction. And he always, like, I've heard stories, like I wasn't really close to my dad. My dad didn't raise me, but I always knew of him. And then I remember hearing stories. And before he passed, like I had learned that he was going to pass away. So some of my family members on my dad's side had told me, hey, you need to go to Germany. You need to go see your dad. You need to go talk to him. And the interesting thing is, I made a decision almost 25 years ago to kind of follow a friend into like the painting industry, like painting houses and learning how to like drywall and do all this kind of stuff. Right. And I remember being very like, kind of mesmerized by it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. And this is a kind of a cool skill. And you have a lot of autonomy, or you can work alone, and, it's super cool. And then come to find out, I go to Germany, and I'm having a conversation with my dad's wife, and she goes, "Oh yeah, your dad, he worked with his hands, and he was a great painter, and he did drywall, and he did all this." And then she hands me one of his business cards, and it said George Fisher Enterprises, and I'm like, "That's why I know how to paint. Like, it came so easy to me."
That's wild to me, because it's almost like this.
It was like I have this innate ability that
it's a part of your DNA.
It's part of my DNA that
to a certain degree.
That I didn't really. Yeah. I didn't know that I was kind of predisposed.
But I think you have a lot more than you realize.
Oh yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is, so then I grow up with this. I'll tell you another cool story. So when I was a kid, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I would go and visit my grandfather lived at the end of like these little, I guess they were like duplexes, but I guess he lived at the end of a fourplex. There was like these little units, right? And they all shared like this backyard, but he had the big corner in the backyard, and he would have all these plants, like these potted plants. And I remember I used to line up in the summertime, I would line up these potted plants, and there was this like slab of cement in the corner, and I would stand in the slab of cement corner, and I would have my little transistor radio, and I would blast it, and I would sing to the plants, like I would line up the plants like if they were audience members, and I would be over there, and I would be singing Michael Jackson and singing James Brown and all this stuff. And it's just so funny, like how early on you kind of get bit by the bug, right?
I don't know if it's, man, it's kind of funny, because like I have a different sort of feeling about that now.
And then years later, my son decides, like, he's like, I remember we went to school together for a little while, right? We went to this like recording studio program, and we were in the same cohort, and halfway through he's like, it was for recording, right? And I'd been using Pro Tools forever, just kind of taught myself. And I said, hey, you got to do something. You're out of high school now. You can't keep working at the board shop, the skate shop. We got to figure out what you're going to do. And he's like, all right, I'll go to school. So we're in school, and halfway through, he's like, Pop, I ain't feeling this recording stuff. Like, I love music, but this is not for me. And mind you, he's passing all the classes. He's like, doesn't even have to study. I'm over there trying to study. I keep failing and do all this. It wasn't his thing. But halfway through, he goes, you know what? I kind of like taking pictures. I go, okay, we know what you. All right, well, let's go talk to the counselor. Man, he goes and talks to the counselor, and they're like, oh yeah, we can switch you to this program. We'll teach you how to edit. We'll teach you how to shoot. We'll teach you how to storyboard. We'll teach you how to do. And his eyes lit up. And then that next week he had a class. Man, he came back and he's like, Pop, I learned this. And he was like off to the races.
That's amazing, because you know what, man? I think that's huge. And
yeah.
I think that's something that we
and then it led to all this other stuff,
you give it, you point a direction, and you sort of look at the possibility.
Sure.
You can't stick a stick in the mud and go there.
Right.
And that's the thing, I don't even know if you know this, right? So Marley was in her second year at Pepperdine.
Yes.
on a pretty much a full ride.
I didn't know that part.
Almost full ride, right?
Okay.
She basically decided before going back to school for the next, because it was right in the middle of the pandemic. She said, you know what, I'm going to leave school now because I want to pursue my musical career. I want to go sing, and I want to go. And I was like, what could I say? But other than, okay, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. And, you know, it's funny because as a parent, we sort of, you know, we want to try to prepare our kids for the world, right? To protect them, income, and this thing, and all these things. And as an adult, you go, man, it's not a damn thing that's so sure that's.
Yeah.
And honestly, if their heart is not in it, it could be it could ruin their spirit. You know,
Yeah.
one of the greatest things I think that you can ever do for anybody is encourage them in a direction that brings light to their eyes. That's it. Because I've seen all facets of. I know that I've done so many other things in between my money paychecks and my music checks and all this to supplement or survive. And a lot of those things I do with the spirit of, okay, it's a necessity. I may not dig it, I may not love it. And then sometimes even within the thing that I love, there's a part of duty that brings me a certain amount of money that's really non-inspirational, you know? And it's weird because I look back now, you know, at my journey, man, I think I'm at a place now where the level of surrender is coupled with excitement, where at different times in the past, some of the surrender was almost like it had a little bit of fear.
Oh, sure.
Or resistance or hesitation in it, you know. Every time I look at my journey, it's never been like if I wrote it out on a chart, people would be like, hell no, that can't be real. Dude, I had one year where I made 150 grand, and then I had a next year where I damn near almost didn't make 40.
Sure.
That's hard. And people don't understand. I'm going to keep
Brother,
that shit real. People
yeah.
don't understand. Now, they're gonna go, wow, that 150 year is what I want to make the 200 year, which could happen, and you have done, but they don't understand that in a world where things are shifting constantly, especially in the creative arts.
Oh.
So when I say to my kids now, it's like, listen. Don't ever put yourself in a situation where you're completely and solely reliant on one aspect of your ability. The thing about you is you're a you have always been drawn to the creative arts. You're a creative. From everything from acting to music to production to, you know, and it's a passion and it's a joy. You have a skill set where you can basically at any time go, okay, well, I can go do this and do this thing to make some money, right? Two different things. Recently, I was talking about how when I was making the most money I ever made, I become very disillusioned about my love for my craft. Only to later realize in my self-reflection it had not a damn thing to do with my love for my craft. It was the business part of it. I never fell out of love with music. Never once in my life have I. Sometimes I say music has saved my life. But the music, the business of music, man, was such a damn burden. It's such a disappointment. As so many times it was heartbreaking to me.
Absolutely.
I got the two confused. The wiring got crossed. You know what I mean?
I remember moving to Los Angeles from Northern California and going from making, I think I was making like $75,000 a year working at New United Motor Manufacturing in Fremont, California, local UAW, building cars. And you know, we had bought a house and the kids were in private school and you know, we had a really nice place and I was happy and we wanted for nothing. Michelle worked part-time and it was good. But the dream, the desire to pursue music, I had the deal And now I had the opportunity to come to LA and get into commercials and get some, some other activities going. Man, I had to let go of New Me. And that first year, man, I went from that 75K to $8,000 the following year, working odd jobs. I was pulling my hair out. I had no skills. I was just believing that something would crack. And I'll be honest with you, man, it put a lot of strain on stuff that, on my relationship, right, with my wife, on my relationship with my kids, because they're seeing me trying to record and write songs. The struggle of, and I remember I had this rap group. Here I am, a hardcore believer, man, like just, steadfast.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we can make.
And then I've got these rap dudes in our apartment on the weekends, and I'm trying to record them, and they're going, F this, F that, F this, and I literally put the kids and my wife in the room. I'm like, just stay in the room for a couple of hours, I made so many mistakes.
That's
right?
okay, man.
And I did so.
That's part of the journey.
It's part of the journey. Yeah,
and
of course.
You can't try to. This is one of the things
I'm not diminishing, the experiences that I learned, but all I'm trying to highlight basically is when you're a creative person and you really believe in yourself, you're going to go through it. You're going to go through it because basically what you're learning is, well, how bad do you believe in yourself? Because there is no safety net. I don't care if I would have saved up a year, if I would have had the job that I thought I was going to have, I thought I was going to be working for a company called TABC who made the beds for the Toyota pickups.
Right.
I had went down there. I had interviewed with them. They're like, yeah, you'll have a job when you oh, great. Okay. I'll be working here. That's good. We'll sell the house. We'll buy another place. Man, when it came time to it, they're like, oh, sorry. The guys that said that they were going to retire have decided to stay on for another 10 years. And I'm going, I don't know how to do anything else.
And that's one of the things that we learned. And I guarantee you that Jordan, this is the thing. As parents, we always want to shield our kids from the things that are difficult because we want their lives to be a better reflection of what our lives are.
Oh, absolutely. In every way.
But one of the things I think we can make a big mistake about is shielding them from struggle because it's just a part of the journey no matter what your situation is.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes them seeing you persevere through struggle teaches them a greater gift, which is perseverance, man.
Yeah.
There's going to be struggle. I had a conversation with a dear friend of mine who's an incredible comedian and did theater for a long time and I thought could be a really great actress, right? We had a real heart-to-heart. She's worked in a finance company for the last 10 years. She's very solid financially. Basically, a dream job for anybody who ever wanted to work in finance. She grew each year with her company. She holds a position. She's got her own team now. And we had a talk one night, and she says, Al, the reason why I never really jumped back into what my truest passion was is because I didn't want to struggle.
I heard
but
that.
everybody that's successful
right
will tell you 1,000 stories about 1,000 struggles that they had.
Sure.
And the thing that I think about sometimes is, I'd rather go through a journey of heartbreaks filled with a few victories, knowing that I followed my passion, my heart, my intuition, then be at the end of my life going, I've got these golden handcuffs. A lot of people have these golden handcuffs. They get paid just enough that they can give most of their life to their job and no time to their dream, but have enough disposable income to distract themselves to the next raise, to the next thing. And I have no judgment Because listen, man, not everybody's willing to go through the sacrifices it takes. Some people
It's-
to really even be in the places that we've been by happenstance, you know. And I don't judge anybody on this because honestly, man, you know, I wouldn't. Part of me was like, you know, I'm sure the same way. Like, part of me is like, wow, it'd be great if one of my kids became a lawyer.
Oh yeah.
Or it'd be great if one of my kids became a. But hell no, I don't want my kid to ever become something that they don't like doing, that they think is just the safe path for them to go
Sure.
to earn a living or earn a dollar. Their heart is not in it at all. Because I see too many disgruntled people hating what they do.
Yeah.
And are very disconnected and very unhappy and very unfulfilled, and their light is dimmed. I don't wish that for anybody.
You know what's interesting? I remember when I got into the real estate market in 2008, when it was crashing, right? That's when I originally got involved. And I remember getting, you know, I actually sold my first house to Jason Pennock, one of the producers for the Heavyweights.
Wow.
And, you know, I got that check and I was like, that's a huge check. But did it keep me? Did it keep me in the business? No, because my heart was still like, I still want to go back. I want to go on tour. I still want to act. I still want to. So, you know what I mean? I couldn't let it go. And it wasn't till years later where I decided to come back to it. And I figured out a way, when I really walked away from like pursuing music, pursuing acting, I thought there was going to be a moment where I was like, oh man, I can feel it coming. Like something like I'm going to fall apart, or I'm going to be crying, or, you know, that's what I thought was going to happen. That's not what happened. Mm-hmm. I was ready to make a change. And I think that's something that I want to make sure I share with you, because I know that you still are 100% involved in being a creative.
Oh, absolutely.
and doing your thing, and you still get calls to go on tours and to do things and to produce other folks. But for me, I still feel like I'm that musician. I'm just being, or even that actor. I'm just in a different. I'm in a different lane now. I'm still able to figure out ways to be creative and meet that outlet, you know?
Yeah. What you're going to use just, I think one of the things that I found out, man.
I'm using the skills that I learned a long time ago that are so second nature to me that I never thought I would ever use in this capacity. But that's the interesting thing about life and the journey that we're on, right? It's like, you're going to be pleasantly surprised when you get to your 50s. You're going to be, right? 'Cause, I mean, that's where we are,
man.
right?
Yeah.
And you're all that you've learned and all that you've been through.
Right.
It wasn't for.
Oh no, so much wisdom.
It wasn't in vain. There's so much wisdom that you're going to come away with. And I feel like, kind of like the conversation we were having a little earlier, right? Where, you know, I feel like it doesn't matter if you got all the dollars in the bank account, whether you do or you don't. There's still so much value.
Oh, inherent value.
Right? That you have
and ancestral value.
Yeah, that you can give to people. That you can give to just the younger musician, younger professional, what have you. It
doesn't matter, you know. And quite honestly, you know, I think one of the reasons too. I think life is a very interesting thing because you know, Charles Bukowski is one of my favorite writers. It's funny. And a book, I was reading a few books before I moved in my early 20s from New York to Los Angeles, and it talks about the fullness of life. And it talks about if you really want to live a full life, you have to experience every facet of it. You know, from great love to great disappointment, from heartbreak to bliss, from like I said, I've worked at poverty level, and there's people in the world who will call me rich, and I think when you, I guess if you call it a spectrum, you experience almost every part of that, you know. And I think as a creative, when you're really authentic and you're honest about telling your story, and this is one of the things I learned, especially through a lot of my travels, like I never met anybody who I thought had less value than I do. They're not me, and they're not meant to be me. But like, I can't judge somebody else's value based on their position in life, or what they do, or who they are. We're actually a lot more alike than we are different. Because at the end of the day, if something hurts them, they're going to cry. They're going to feel pain. There's a time where, I remember one time, man.
I actually have a story that I'm going to share right now.
Yeah.
That I've seen that firsthand from you. And it was such an interesting moment. Remember when I was saying, like, we were telling little stories earlier about when me and you get together and we're out and about. And I think it was that day, or it was maybe another time. We were at the Grove, and we walked into, I think it was Nordstrom, or there's a Macy's there or something. And there was a perfume counter, right? And there was this gal there, and you asked for one of the samplers.
Right.
And this gal gave you a look. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Barry, it infuriated me. I was disgusted. I wanted to. I'm being honest, and I'm easy. I'm an easygoing person.
You want to go Sean Connery on her? Old school Sean Connery.
Listen.
You want to put her in her place?
Oh man, I looked at her and I made sure she saw my furrowed eyebrows. You know,
Right.
I was like trying to process what she just said, or it wasn't even what she said. It was the way she responded. Mm-hmm. And you know me. Mm-hmm. I usually speak up, right? I was bullied as a kid, so I gotta.
She had her own problems going on that day,
and that's basically what you said. Like, yep. I was about to say something, I like leaned forward, and I was like, and then you're like, you're like, that's a whole nother.
That wasn't about you, man.
You're like,
it wasn't about me.
You're like, it ain't about us, George.
Yeah, it's not about me.
And you grabbed me. You're like, let's go, man.
Yeah, it's not about it. Yeah.
And so hearing you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's who you've always been. I know you to always been that way, where you don't even engage. You don't even. It doesn't even move you.
It
you just kind of keep
peace.
It moving.
It just disturbs your peace.
Yeah.
And other people can do that. You know, it's kind of like when I say this to you earlier. You know, this is the first time that we've lived in a time where literally before you get out of bed, your thinking can be programmed by something outside of your psyche, your consciousness. You know, I try every day before I even look at my phone to find out what time it is when I wake up and check my messages to write in my journal. Something positive, a positive affirmation, a hope for my day, a reflection of my dreams, something, bro. Because I know as soon as I check the time, there's something else that's going to pop up in the news, or you know, and we don't get much sacred time anymore. We really don't. And if we don't, with intention, start to understand that we have to create that for ourselves, we just become programmed. And when people respond in ways that I think are offensive half the time, I really do think it's because they're going through something. I'm just the face in front of them at the moment. You know what? She might have been mulling something over about some customer right before me, or a phone call she was on with somebody, or whatever. And if I allow that to affect the next 15, 20 minutes, hour of my day, by engaging with her, man, then then that's my own fault. It's really how I try to deal with most relationships with people these days. You know, it's unfortunate because I know for a fact, especially in the creative world, you know, and listen, man, a lot of times when I say things, it's because I go through it myself. There was a time where I had a very sour taste about the way business had been done with me in a certain situation. And unfortunately, for like the next several months with other situations that came up, I started looking at the negative in every opportunity that was coming up based on a previous, you know, it was almost like we talk about how you can be very defensive.
Sure.
At some point, you got to realize, wait a minute, am I creating this posture? Or has somebody else done something that I'm responding to and I'm just holding this posture way much longer than I need to?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And we all go through that different times.
Sure we do. Yeah, absolutely.
And I try to be gracious, man, because like we all have a lot of information coming to us at all times. I can't even imagine working in a place where you're dealing with so many faces and so many people that you have to satisfy, and you have to have this posture and be on point. Because I did it. I mean, literally back in the day when I used to work at the Hard Rock Cafe, especially as a busboy, which is really at the very, very, very bottom of the totem pole of like seniority, right?
Wow.
And our motto was love all, serve all. And before you could even become a waiter, you had to understand the customer was always right.
Sure.
This is back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like the customer is, I don't care how much of an asshole they are,
Yeah.
they're always right. And before you say no to them,
Right.
check with the next level management up, right?
Sure. Before
you make a decision that's a reflection of our, company. And it's interesting when you start to think of things that way, because what you realize is that they may not be right, but your response to them only adds fuel to their personal fire, which becomes a bad reflection on the overall scenario,
Sure.
And plus, we both know this, and I'll tell this to anybody. We after you become a husband, which we've both been, and a father, you become a politician. And I don't even like that word. You know what I mean?
But that's true.
It, but you do, because you got to appease.
You have to learn to pick. You've got to learn to pick your battles to keep the peace.
Dinner is a battle. If everybody doesn't want to eat the same food, it's like this is what's on the stove. There's no short order cook here. This is okay. You're either going to eat dinner or you're not going to eat dinner.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's
and we've got so many things in common. And I just want to bring this up. So there was a time where both of our marriages were falling apart. I think yours started first, and then mine and then mine started falling apart. Like I think literally like a year later, I think mine started to fall. But I'm so grateful because me and my ex are the best of friends, and I say that wholeheartedly. If she was here, she would say the same thing. We still have a lot of love for one another, and I love her boyfriend too. Her boyfriend is amazing. Such a great guy. He fits into the whole family dynamic just perfectly. And then my girlfriend totally fits into the dynamic.
See, that's amazing. I love that.
It's a beautiful situation. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that, we can just get past it. And I think I just want to share this. The reason I think why we were able to get past it, because I know it's not a regular occurrence. And I'm reminded constantly, my kids have told me, Pop, you and Mom are like, this doesn't happen, the way you guys are still friends and very loving to one another and loving to the situation. And I'm aware of it. But I remember that time when it was falling apart, and we have a mutual friend, Bill, who has a beautiful sailboat in the Santa Barbara harbor. And
that was a weekend.
And
we both wanted to go somewhere.
And we needed to get away, and Bill was like, I remember I think I called him, And I said, hey, Bill, is it cool? And he goes, you know where like before I could even finish the sentence, he's like, you know where the keys are.
Right.
So we went to Santa Barbara, and we just stayed on.
That was like a spiritual retreat.
It was a spiritual retreat.
We were both just depleted.
We
bro.
were depleted. We were
just like,
done, and we
yeah.
and we went on this beautiful sailboat.
Yep.
And we stayed the weekend.
Yep.
And we just talked.
Yep.
We talked all.
You know what that was? I'm gonna tell you what's
it was.
funny.
Wasn't that amazing? Like
it was. You know what it is, man.
That was
what I love about you. First of all, is this like. A lot of men are afraid to have intimate relationships where they can really be vulnerable.
Sure.
And be honest.
Right.
The thing I appreciate most about you and people in my life who are honest is it gives you a mirror. But it's not a judgmental mirror.
No,
it's
not
a loving mirror.
Absolutely.
It's a mirror where you can take a look at growth that's necessary, strength that's present, and really a non-judgmental place to be able to just be. You know, I think we were both very. I learned a lot from you.
I equally learned so much from you. I really did. I think for me, I had a friend of mine, my buddy Eric Labat, who's that dude has always been a blessing to me. He taught me everything I knew about painting, number one. And he's God-fearing man, extremely God-fearing man. And I remember one time he had a conversation with me. This is years ago. This is not who I am today by any means. But I remember one time he pulled me aside and he's like, George, you're so angry. Why are you so angry? What is all this anger?
Wow.
And I was like, what? What are you talking about, man? You know, I was angry. I was angry about a lot of things. You know, there's a tremendous amount of things I was angry about. And I couldn't even pinpoint it at that time.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from you. And, you know, thinking of that time when you were going through it, man, you were so taking it one day at a time. You never lashed out. Like, you never pulled away from your kids, even though it was a difficult situation. You never resorted to like creating vices for yourself. And I thought it was really interesting because, and I'll be honest, when I went through it and we separated, I took I was down and out for about, I want to say about not even 6 months, maybe 6 months, 4 or 5 months where I was really down in the dumps and I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And then when the divorce happened, I was really disappointed for a long time. And then I got out there and I immediately started dating and seeing if I still had it and wanted to move forward and got my, I was out there and I was not dating the right kind of gals at first and foremost. I was dating girls that were just, that I had never experienced, that I had nothing in common with. And I'm not saying that they were bad gals. They were actually great people.
Right.
It just wasn't, we weren't really meant to be together, and you find that out. They knew that, I knew that. So I don't want to put any.
I think that's a natural thing to do. And quite
Absolutely.
honestly, it's funny because.
But what I learned about you. So we handled our divorce very different. Mm-hmm. Where I immediately got out there, was like, hey, right. What's up? And you didn't do that. You were like, you watched me. So, and I remember you're like, no, man. I'm like, hey, let's go do this. Hey, you're like, nah, man, I'm good.
You know what, man? When I look back at it now, though.
And you were low key. You were like, You stayed out of trouble. I tried calling you. I was like,
No, we hung and we had some fun times.
we had some
fun times.
Well, we had some fun times,
But I'll tell you this. I was tired, bro.
Were you?
You know what's funny now when I look back at it? I think the only reserve of energy that I had in me was the energy to manage my emotional and supportive relationship to my kids at the time and my mental well-being.
I saw that.
I did not have the energy for any bullshit.
Yeah.
Not another woman, not dating somebody, and quite honestly, because I was so tired of the battle before the end, I would not have given the best version of myself in any situation. And I think there's a part of me also that knew that it may have been a greater distraction than going through whatever process I need to go through to heal and just go. I don't regret it, to be honest with you, because I really do believe at that time, if anything had been a situation where I felt like, oh, this is an opportunity or this is a situation that could be really good for me, I would have felt it. But I also felt as well that I needed to be the rock at that time.
Dude,
and a constant.
I learned so much from that time period. That's what I want to get at is I was just like, I want to meet as many folks as possible. I want to get out there. and not necessarily have, tons of relationships. That's not what I was doing. I was just trying to meet people. I was making new friends.
You wanted to feel valued.
I wanted to feel valued. Yeah. And I was out there and I was having a lot of fun and I think I was doing some music too, which was kind of cool. But I remember this one time, I think you kind of like finally came out of that time period and you felt very healthy. And I don't know how we knew about this or who had tickets and it was the
Anderson Paak
show.
Sunset show in front of the Guitar Center.
In front of the Guitar Center.
That was a fun night.
And Jessamy came and met us out there.
We stayed until 5 in the morning, right? Well, 4 in the morning.
Okay, so check this out. So we go to the Anderson Paak show. Man.
I remember this.
It was a free show. It was a free show.
Yeah.
No.
We had to get tickets.
No, we got tickets from somebody, but it was outdoor, but it was a private event. And we go to the show,
right?
And we get in, and we see the show,
and we're dancing with these people.
We start dancing with these people that we meet at the show, right?
Right.
And these girls, a group of girls,
and they invite us to like a restaurant,
and then they invite us after the show to this restaurant.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It was some
and
restaurant.
Then we went to the restaurant.
I think was it the Standard in
No, I think it was some place close to where we were.
It wasn't that far, right? So we go to the restaurant and we're hanging out, and there's a bar there, and then they have more friends come.
And then they say, "Hey, why don't you guys take a drive with us to this other place?
Because we're going to go dancing at this other spot.
Which is some secret location type
Secret location.
We had to walk through a kitchen.
I remember going, and it was so weird because we were all holding hands so that we didn't get lost, and we had to hurry up. And I remember seeing Lionel. Remember,
Lionel Richie was. That's right.
Lionel,
that's exact. Yeah, right.
Lionel Richie was sitting at one of the. It was the cool. It was this private weird.
I don't even know how we.
We're holding hands and we're running through, and we run through this kitchen. They're cooking in the kitchen, and we're running through.
And then there's this dance floor.
And then there's this dance floor that has a ceiling.
It was so funny.
The ceiling was like this low, and brother, we danced.
Oh, it was awesome.
Till like 5 in the morning, till the sun came up.
Yeah, it was awesome. That was a fun time. That was one of those times, honestly, where I needed that.
I needed it too. But it was a time where we were
very spontaneous.
It was very spontaneous. And just so you know, we didn't hook up
Nothing
with
was crazy.
Nothing was crazy.
But it was
We
a
didn't-
great time. It was a great time.
They were like really friendly. I think I friended one or two of the gals because there was a group of friends, and we had so much fun. But it was 5 a.m, and then I talked to you. I think the next day, I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" You're like, "Man, I'm still recovering, man. I'm so sore from dancing all."
It's a trip, man. You know what? I always say this. Like, I feel bad. You know, one of the things that we talked about, especially because we were both married for over 20 years.
Yeah.
To our respective partners, and you know, dedicated fathers and partners, and you know, when you go through something that, and definitely my marriage spanned, like literally, if you add up all the years I was married, it's about half my life.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you know,
it's-
so to
yeah.
move from a certain mindset and a structure to something that shifts so severely without support and without somebody who has a mutual understanding of it's I think it's actually impossible to heal from without a certain amount of therapy or somebody who's a good friend. And you were my good friend, and I learned a lot from you during that time. I think we both learned different lessons.
We learned, yeah.
You know, during that time. And I think there were times when we just had to get out and just have fun, man. And that was cool too.
And it was harmless. Like, you know, it was good just to be with a friend who knows exactly how I feel and what I'm going through. And we would have these long conversations, these long walks. And we would do a lot of I would call you occasionally, right? And go, "Dude, road trip." That's all I would
absolutely.
say. I would
Yep.
say, I
Let's
would
go.
call you and say,
Let's go.
"Road trip."
Let's go.
And then you'd go, "Where are we going?"
Yep.
I go, Santa Barbara.
Yep.
And you're like, "What time are you picking me up?"
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
And then we're off. And we would catch up and we would talk if I would get like a break, you know, because I started working a lot. I remember I was working a lot and you weren't on tour or something. You got a break. You would come home or something.
And honestly, that was a really tough time, man, for me.
Yeah.
Because that was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And people don't understand, but like literally going from being, even for me professionally, I mean, I was touring probably for a good, God, man, realistically, I'm going to say 15 years.
Yeah.
Man, with breaks in between, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then-
I remember you would be gone, and then I would get a phone call from you'd be somewhere,
Right.
and you're like, "Oh yeah, hey, I left tickets for the only show I never got to see, but you left tickets for me was
Anaheim?
it
For
was
Avril Lavigne?
It wasn't Avril. It was you've played for Avril Lavigne, Kelly Clarkson, Mr. Jessica Simpson. I forgot his name.
Oh, Nick Lachey. Oh, that's heavy, man.
I don't mean it. No
Oh, a
disrespect.
lot of them. But wait, did you ever get
I
to see
didn't get
Avril
to-
live at all or no?
No, I
Oh, really?
actually didn't see.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You
I
got to
wanted
see Kelly, though. You got to
Kelly,
see
I saw a
Kelly.
bunch of times,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
got me backstage. But you got me and the family backstage passes. I got to meet her. I think a couple of times. I met everybody in the band numerous times.
Derek, I still miss Derek, man. I just thought about him recently.
Yeah,
That was rough. Just that he passed away. I mean,
he was a cool dude.
yeah.
All
And
those
young.
guys, all those guys in the band were super cool.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because I feel like in a way I've had several lifetimes, and I'm excited about this part of the journey. You know, it's weird. Like when I look at kids now, and I talk to younger people about adulting, because it's kind of funny, a funny word, like adulting. It's a funny word, right? Because what the hell, you know what I mean? I'm still trying to figure a bunch of stuff out myself, man. You know, and then like I say, I got friends, man.
Hey, how does it feel? Listen. I think the greatest. This was a great idea, Jordan. You're brilliant. How does it feel to be a grandparent?
Oh wow, man, it's a blessing. I'm gonna tell you why, and you'll understand this. We have friends who weren't even fortunate enough to get to 50.
Yeah.
Right? And especially, and on the flip side of that, I got friends who were grandparents at 30.
Wow.
5.
Wow.
Babies who had babies who had babies. You know what I mean?
Sure.
For me, it's really special because I always said that it would happen when I was ready for it. And my oldest daughter was always a kid who said she was never going to have kids. She was never going to have kids. And I knew that when she called me to tell me that she was pregnant, she was so happy that, first of all, she was ready for it. She was happy to engage, and that I was ready for it. So in a way, it's almost like, you ever have it was never anything I prayed for. You know how in your life you have things that you want and you ask for those? I knew I would become a grandfather one day, and I hoped I would. I never knew when, and I never knew. I actually thought it would be either Jessamy or Marley before it was her. And the fact that she it makes sense. It's almost like, you know what? It's almost like I got to see a healing take place. I got to see something happen in her that's actually very healing to me. I spent time with my grandson for the first time last summer. And it just blows me away that I can now tell her stories about how he's so like her in a lot of ways that she doesn't remember at all. But I'm like, no, you did this, and you're so much alike, and it's amazing to me because I really feel like for us, it is part of the blessing of getting older. I don't like to really. It's kind of weird because even though, dude, I'll be 59 this year.
Wow, really?
I'm closer to 60
Don't,
than 50.
Don't he look good?
No,
for
I'm
50?
just saying. But that's what's trippy about that. What's trippy about that is I don't feel like it.
Of course not. Yeah, no.
I don't feel like my spirit's. It's like when I hear kids use that word adulting, I'm kind of like, damn, what does that feel like? What is this adulting stuff like? Because I know people who listen, man. One of my best friends, man, is like I said, he'll be 72 this year.
Yeah.
You don't ever get to a place where you have it all figured out. And it's all laid out. And then at some point you get to your life where it's like, okay, you better start getting your papers in order. What the hell is that? I'm dying now? Now I get things in order? This is what figuring it out is where my stuff is going to go or whatever.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it's weird because I think that's one of the things I think I'm the most rebellious in, to be honest with you, is you get old. And then you die. You just slow down and you just stop having fun and you don't laugh anymore.
I
don't understand that.
For me, I got to tell you, man, it's almost like, my kids are wonderful, and I thank God for them every day. I really do. I have the most incredible, phenomenal relationship with my children.
I feel the same way.
I'm so
Very
blessed. Grateful. I'm so grateful that they love me, they respect me,
and they want to be around
honor
you.
me, they want to be around me. I mean, I couldn't have guessed or even dreamt up the relationship I have with my. It moves me to no end, right? But then your children have children, and that is I didn't think I could love anybody more than I love my kids.
Isn't that great?
It gives you a new layer of love that you didn't even know existed.
It amplifies.
It amplifies. It you're kaboom. And then I feel, and then of course you have the freedom of giving them back, of course. Right?
Yeah.
But there's another equation to the whole situation. Is your family is growing. Your legacy.
Oh, absolutely.
You could see your
Yes.
legacy in the eyes of your family members, and it's just the great. I thought it was great to be on stage and to sing and to perform. Right. I thought that was the greatest feeling in the world. But when you sit at the end of a table and you're having dinner with these people that
That's
you love,
everything right there. That's
dude,
really everything.
that's that's what it's all about. If you can get to that place, you've won. It doesn't
Exactly.
It doesn't matter about anything else, man. And I've been riding this wave. I've been riding this wave since baby number one, since my daughter had her son Owen. I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, oh my God, you're getting married? Wait, you can move, you're moving out? What do you mean you're moving out? We take care of you. No, Dad, I can move out. I can afford my own place. You know what I mean? All those things, and it just kind of compounds, and then you're just like, wow.
It's evolution. You know, I think in a way too, check this out. As we can see things move forward, I think we should also have a greater understanding of things before us. Because as you evolve, right, and you move your ancestry forward, look back. You know, all the things that are part of our makeup, like you were saying about your dad and your grandfather. Our ancestors empower us in so many different ways, man.
Sure.
We have so many things in us that we are unaware of. You know, the cool thing is that, like, if Jordan ever sees his daughter do something that reminds him of you, he'll go, you know what? Your granddad used to do this shit all the time. And it either bugs the shit out of me or it's funny. One or the other. You know what I mean? It's just fun. Life, we always agreed on this. And I think that's why I love you and appreciate you so much. It's like, no matter what we were going through in life, you know, even in the process of pursuing our dreams and our goals, we always had this conviction about family was really the greatest joy at the root of it all.
Absolutely.
I don't think there was anything that I ever really wanted to achieve in my personal success I didn't want to share with my family, including my ex-wife. You know?
Oh, I got one last story, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah. Speaking of wanting to share things with your family, so Mr. Jamie Jones of All for One, lead singer of All for One, had offered me a spot to hang out with Stevie Wonder, right, on Christmas, and just go and sing carols and hang out and sit. He has a piano, and everybody sits around the piano, and they all take turns singing songs. And I was like, yeah, I'll go. And I said, oh man, my wife is going to be so excited. And he's like, oh, that's the thing, George. Only you can go. You can't bring your family. You can't bring your wife. It's just you. And without hesitation, of course, I said, well, I'm going to have to, turn it down because that's Christmas, man. And it
was on Christmas Day?
It was on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So then I go, he goes, oh, okay, man, I totally understand. It's cool.
Right.
So later, my ex-wife gets home and goes, so what's going on? And I'm like, oh, I got offered this cool invite to Stevie Wonder's place, and for Christmas, but I turned him down because he said I could only go for Christmas. And she goes, man, you're stupid. I would have went by myself. and then I was like, I should have went, man.
No, you shouldn't.
And no, but I'm still
because you know what?
But I'm still kicking myself.
No. This is the thing. I've had so many. Listen, this is the thing. This is the thing, though. Somebody said this to me a long time ago, and I totally believe it to be true. They've never met a man who's loved his family on his deathbed, who wished for more time at the office, or more money, or more accolades. If anything, the one thing they wanted was more time with the people they loved. So any sacrifice that you make to be around the people that you love is not a sacrifice in vain, man. Those are the things that push us a little harder. I know for a fact that, like, the things that pushed you so hard as a man were wired differently, right? Even the things you didn't enjoy so much. At the end of the day, you knew you had these kids and this woman that you loved, that you were looking after.
Absolutely.
And you wanted to do something for them.
Always.
Sometimes we're selfish, but I don't think that I've ever been in a situation where I got invited to go to South Africa, man, to do this gig. And I always wanted to go to Africa. It was the first time I got invited to go to Africa. And my ex was 8 months pregnant with Jessamy, my first son, right? And she said the same thing, like, oh, I know you really wanted to go and you should do it. And like, we're not due till da-da-da-da-da, whatever, right?
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Because something about me and my wiring, I don't know if it's all men, I'm just gonna say me, right? If something happened, good, bad, or otherwise, meaning I couldn't be there, I would never forgive myself.
Right. No, I get it.
For not being there.
Absolutely.
So I chose not to go.
Sure.
Chose not to go. And I don't regret that.
Yeah.
I missed this opportunity to go to Africa. Africa's still going to be there.
Right.
And at different times, man, this is one of those really interesting things too, because there's certain times where your intuition is going to tell you to do something that you know is right for you, no matter what nobody else says.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I do believe that we get spiritual guidance, and we get guidance that'll baffle us as well as the people we love, and we got to do something that's very necessary for us to do.
Absolutely.
And
Al, it's been a pleasure, man, and we got to have you back. We got to have you back, brother.
Oh, we'll come back
because we're just scratching the surface. We have such a history.
We've had so many conversations, honestly, that I feel would be so interesting.
Yeah, I think we grew up together to some degree.
We absolutely did.
Dude,
I've seen a lot of different versions of you. I could bring my computer here, right? Yeah.
With the dreadlocks
and like the whole. No, dude. No. I've seen so many different
bad hairstyles.
Your headshots. Your
my headshots.
No.
Oh my god.
And it's funny because like I really do feel like you watch certain people's evolution and you feel proud of them. And you feel like you've been a part of it with them.
Oh,
the whole
absolutely.
way,
Yeah, we definitely aren't an island.
Yeah.
I think everyone we come in contact with really has a part to play in our evolution. I really believe that. I mean, I've got, my best friend Lewis has shared with me so many things. He's went through, his own things or what have you, and I've learned from him, and I've got a couple of friends now that I'm really pouring into, that I speak with on a regular basis, and they've really kind of reached out for help and stuff. So it's good.
As men, that's something I think that we need to do more of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope we're evolving. I mean,
yeah.
At least we're having like the mental health conversation a lot more, especially since this pandemic. But it's necessary, man. We can't. I think it's a great disservice to us as well as the future generation of men, man, to sort of not be able to have people that we can be completely real with, and be completely vulnerable with, and completely supportive of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's
so
important.
I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, my man.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
And the young fish are over there.
Episode 2 is in the can. We did it. And so stay tuned for episode 3. I'm sure we'll have it up and running very soon. Thanks so much, guys, for showing up. Peace.